What do you make of the new OBU design, and will the new distance-based charging end up costing drivers more? The answer is coming up from our senior transport correspondent.
Amid today's 9/9 sales, the Did You Know the Online Great Singapore sale starts today? Experts say the eGSS needs greater awareness.
And the first batch of visitors from New Zealand and Brunei touched down in Singapore following the unilateral reopening of our borders to the two countries.
Hello, you're watching The Big Story, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. I'm Haryanto Diman.
And I'm Olivia Quay. You can subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss a single episode.
Now, clunky, inelegant and takes up too much space. Now, those are the reactions that motorists have about the new three-piece onboard unit that will replace the current in-vehicle unit. The OBU is a part of the next generation electronic road pricing system set to start in 2023.
The OBU will come in two designs, a one-piece unit for motorcycles and a three-piece unit for other vehicles. The latter comprises an antenna, a touchscreen display to be mounted on the windscreen, and a processing unit which can be attached beneath the dashboard.
The Land Transport Authority said yesterday that installation of the new OBU will start in the second half of next year.
Meanwhile, motorists generally welcome the new ERP system, saying that the distance-based charging seems like a fairer system and would encourage a more judicious driving culture in Singapore.
Here to share more on the next generation ERP system and the OBU is the Straits Times senior transport correspondent, Christopher Tan. Hi, Christopher. Glad to have you back.
Hello.
Chris,
Hi, pleasure.
From the current one-piece IU to the new three-piece OBU, why is there a need for a clunky unit?
Okay, I think there's been some attempt to make it as streamlined as possible. And that's why they separated the components into three instead of having one big one. You will remember that when they were putting out trials, they actually showed us some pictures of a one-piece unit. But that one was actually quite big. It also incorporated a card reader, an antenna, as well as a screen. So probably they were attempting to, separate the three so that the one that sticks up on your windscreen doesn't look as bulky. But the result has been that it looks pretty unsophisticated when all of us are used to one-piece machinery like our phones, our iPads and our laptops, right? So yeah, maybe there can be some kind of solution where, it allows us to incorporate the function of the touchscreen onto our car's infotainment system. That's been one suggestion. And also maybe to hide the card reader into the glove compartment or something where it's not impinging on, knee space or any part of the car which, your knee or thigh comes into contact with. The antenna can be something that is pasted onto the screen, something like that. I mean, all these are suggestions.
Well, Christopher, we know that, eventually the charging system will be distance-based. Could you explain how the distance-based charging works? And do you think the chargers, do they start once the driver, starts the car, or will it be, will it be a separate charge from ERP?
Okay, I mean, to answer the last part of the question first, we don't know, right? The details are not out. What we know is that the distance charging part is not going to be anytime soon. For technical or other reasons, we are not going to see this in the next few years. This second generation ERP is going to come out, going to start in 2023, which is 2 years from now, right? So distance charge will probably a few years after that. So we might be looking at something closer to 2030, if anything of that sort is to come about. Distance charging, as the name implies, charges you for the kilometers that you clock, the distance that you clock. And that's a proxy for the amount of congestion that you contribute to. It is a much sharper tool than the current static ERP system, a cordon system, where once you pass a gantry, once you enter a cordon, you are free to drive as much as your heart desires. That, of course, is not very effective. in terms of congestion, because in the city, you will notice once you get into the CBD, traffic comes to a halt most of the time. But when you have distance charging, then people will be more effective in their driving. They will plan their routes better. They will think ahead of where they want to park. They may decide not to drive in the first place. They might decide to leave their car on the fringe and take a train inside the CBD.
Chris, I just want to clarify. So the distance-based charging starts when the driver starts the car and starts moving. It's not like the current system where you pass through an ERP gantry and then you get charged, right?
Correct. So whether it will start when you turn the ignition on or when the wheels start moving, that's still not clear, but the technology would allow us, the technology that allows distance-based charging would allow all kinds of permutations. It might even allow them to charge for the time that you occupy a space, a parking space, for instance, or waiting by the curb for someone, because technically you are contributing to congestion by waiting by the side, even if you are not moving. So that will be a policy decision, all right? But the technology to charge according to distance will allow them to charge all these things: waiting time, right? Even idling time. That would be good for controlling pollution also, because a lot of whether you know it or not, it is illegal to leave an engine on when you're waiting by the side. So that would also allow them to enforce idling, right? Idling infringements, where you leave the engine running when you're not moving.
Well, also along the same lines of policy decisions, do you think then that car taxes like road tax should be reviewed, and in turn, will all of this influence a person's decision to buy a car, Christopher?
Certainly, in a lot of countries, people have access to a car, but they don't necessarily drive them as much as we do. Like for instance, someone in Tokyo, if you reach a certain income level, you get a car, right? But you may not use that car until the weekend comes about. And therefore, on weekdays, you take the train, you commute by train, and the streets are fairly smooth flowing. So that kind of policy where they allow congestion, right, to come to a point where people decide, say, no, it's not effective for me to drive a car because I'm going to be caught in a huge jam. I'm going to be late for work, or I have to wake up at 4 a.m. Or, I'm not going to find parking, or if I find parking, it's going to cost me an arm and a leg, right? So that kind of thing, they will decide by themselves, and they will pull back and they will leave their car at home. But the access to a car, which is really a natural aspiration for anybody who reaches a certain affluence level, it's really hard for you to curb, Otherwise, you might run into the danger of having a population where young people and young successful people, come up to a certain point in the career and they say, I want to own a car, and they can't have it. And you might have an immigration problem. You might have a brain drain. You might have, a talent drain. You would not want that.
Well, thank you so much, Christopher, for your insights. Great insights there.
Yep.
Always a pleasure to speak with you. Now, we were speaking to the Straits Times Senior Transport Correspondent, Christopher Tan, on the new ERP system. On to the latest COVID-19 situation in Singapore. 75 new cases were confirmed today, taking the total count to 57,166. Now, today's cases included one community case who's a work pass holder. There were also 14 imported cases.
The Health Ministry also said that among the remaining 60 cases who are residing in dormitories, 31 are from Westlight Toh Guan Dorm. The majority of them had been placed on quarantine earlier and were tested during quarantine to determine their status. More details will be announced later tonight.
In other local news, Deputy Attorney General Hiri Kumar Nair will lead the review into the case of former domestic worker Pati Liani. She was acquitted of stealing from Changi Airport Group Chairman Liew Man Leong and his family. The Attorney General's chambers said that Attorney General Lucien Wong had already recused himself from the review of this case on September 5th for personal reasons. The AGC didn't elaborate on the reasons, but in response to media queries, it noted that years before becoming Attorney General, Mr. Wong sat on the board of directors of CapitaLand while Mr. Liu was president and CEO of the company.
From 2017 to 2019, the Manpower Ministry handled an average of 550 cases a year of maids being made to work illegally by their employers or household members. The numbers form just 0.2% of the over 236,000 employers of foreign domestic workers here. MOM said that 3/4 of the cases came from alerts by third parties and 1/4 were complaints made by the maids themselves.
The first 14 visitors from New Zealand and Brunei touched down at Changi Airport yesterday, following Singapore's unilateral reopening of its borders to the two countries. 5 were from Brunei and the rest from New Zealand. As of 5 p.m. yesterday, the Civil Aviation Authority of Singapore had approved 59 travellers from Brunei and 77 from New Zealand to fly to Singapore.
Singapore's first campus-style integrated development is set to be completed in the fourth quarter of next year. Located in One North, Rochester Commons will have a 17-storey Grade A office tower, as well as 12 black and white heritage bungalows, of which 7 are for offices and the remaining 5 for F&B or retail use. The project will also have a hotel. And one of the key features of the integrated development is Catapult, Southeast Asia's first shared executive learning centre that uses technologies like VR and augmented reality to deliver training programs. The Great Singapore Sale starts today and will go on until October 10th, and for the first time in 26 years, it'll be largely online. Well, on the Go Spree website, shoppers can download coupons that can be used for online or physical in-store purchases.
As you know, the retail sector is going through a slump. Excluding motor vehicles, retail sales fell 7.7% year-on-year in July, but they rose 19.5% from June on a seasonally adjusted basis as COVID-19 restrictions eased. Well, the big question is, will shoppers flock to the eGSS? We'll have to wait and see, but for now we're joined by Amos Tan, a senior lecturer and course chair in the School of Business at Singapore Polytechnic. Welcome, Amos. So what do you make of the various platforms facilitating the eGSS, like GoSpree.sg and the virtual furniture showroom, the Furniture Centrum? Are those two platforms appealing enough to bring in shoppers, you think?
In my personal opinion, I think, the appeal factor is just one part of it, but the most important factor that we should really look at is how do we bring in the traffic to the platform for this year's eGSS. So if you do not bring in the traffic, regardless of whether the platform is attractive or not, you're not going to bring, customers to all the participating, retailers. Yeah.
Let's talk about the user interface and user friendliness. In terms of those two aspects, how does GoSpree compare with the more notable e-commerce sites like Lazada and Shopee?
Of course, I think it's very different. And Lazada and Shopee, they've spent years, of perfecting and trying to revamp their website to make sure that, the shopping experience, the buying experience, the viewing experience is a seamless one and an easy one. And we all know that, the moment we shop online, and if it's too difficult to find things, it's too difficult to transact and to make payment, the dropout rate is going to be really high. I think when I visited the GoSpree website, it's not so much, of a transaction purpose, but it's more of an informative platform. And so therefore, the question lies here is, after I've got all the information, where do I go? And how easy it is, to get to, the other platform or the other channels where I can do the transaction.
Yeah, good point there, Amos. So Another point you made earlier about, people actually knowing about the eGSS and, what they can do about it, where they can get their sales. So when it comes to promoting a physical sale and an online sale, both these avenues require different marketing tactics. So to your earlier point on that front, how do you think the eGSS has fared and what more can be done to improve it?
Creating awareness by leveraging on, existing channels, existing influence, tying up with, another channel that has lots of traffic, or even, making use of mainstream, media channel, to consistently and repeatedly allow people to know that this eGSS actually exists, where to go, what to do, and what's in for you. I think throughout the entire period, this needs to be heightened. Otherwise, nobody would know that it actually exists and nobody would know what to do.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time, Amos. We've been speaking to Mr. Amos Tan, Senior Lecturer at Singapore Polytechnic.
In the global headlines, India reported just over 89,700 new COVID-19 infections today, taking its total caseload to 4.3 million. Having the highest number of infections outside of the US, India is reporting the largest single-day increases in cases every day for more than a month. Its death rate has remained relatively low, but is starting to show signs of rising, with more than 1,000 deaths reported daily for 8 days straight.
US President Donald Trump is set to announce a further withdrawal of US troops from Iraq. According to a senior administration official, it will be followed by another one in the coming days on a further reduction in US forces in Afghanistan. The decision comes as Mr. Trump faces blowback from a report that he allegedly made disparaging remarks about US war debt. And his announcement, as well as the timing of it, may be aimed at convincing voters that he is following through on promises to end what he has described as America's endless wars.
Across the causeway, a former aide to Malaysia's former First Lady, Rosmah Mansor, told the Malaysian court today that in 2012, he received 100,000 ringgit or over 32,000 Singapore dollars a month. Now this to pay a team of cyber troopers to monitor content on social media and defend her from online attacks. Rosmah is the wife of former Malaysian Premier Najib Razak. The witness, Rizal Mansor, who isn't related to Rosmah, said his main responsibilities were guarding her image and reputation, including arranging media coverage for her events as a means to boost her popularity and image.
The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences said that films hoping to compete for the Best Picture Oscar will have to meet certain criteria over diversity. The Academy set out 4 standards which it hopes will boost representation and inclusion both in front of and behind the camera. For the 96th Oscars in 2025, only films that have met at least 2 of the standards will qualify for the award. The Oscars have been criticized for their lack of diversity. Well, those are our top stories for today, and for more news and videos, you can visit straitstimes.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the red button below.
Once again, I'm Haryanto Diman with Olivia Quay. Join us tomorrow for more stories on The Big Story.